back to the channel. This is the Action Figure Grader, and we're going to talk today about vintage mint on card Star Wars figures, both graded and ungraded. Mainly a few ESBs, some really nice tri-logos that AFA and CIB had for auction, and a few Return of the Jedi cardbacks that were in high grade but mostly yellowed blisters. But before we really dig in any further, I do want to say that I like to look at early cardbacks now that are in high grade, and I just want to think about what would this have sold for in the last May premiere auction on Heritage. And this is a 12-back B, AFA 80 plus Darth Vader unpunched with a little price sticker in the upper left. Toy World price sticker, but look at that, AFA 80 plus. It did have a little card curl to it, but $24.30, which I would argue is fair market value, right? That's probably about right for what it is. But I didn't look on the Heritage closed auctions to see if they had a 12-back B, but I just wonder what this would have gone for in that auction relative to what some of those insane prices that we saw. So I don't know, but that was a pretty fair deal in my opinion for that one. Here are a couple of creatures that sold in the Empire Strikes Back packaging, both of them factory sealed. First is the Hoth Wampa. This one did have a very faint crease on the box, on the usual flap. So here it is. It's very faint, but you can see it there. And that sold for $890. Now, I think, if I remember right, CIB/AFA, they had one of these in an AFA 80 at auction, no flap crease, and it sold for about the same price. It was already graded. So that just shows you the demand for the Hoth Wampa factory sealed when the flap is either uncreased or it's got a very faint crease like this one. This one's a pretty faint one. Same with the Tauntaun. Here's the Tauntaun Open Belly Rescue. I'd like to make my joke again about the inside of the Tauntaun and how bad they smell, but I probably beat that to a dead Tauntaun. But this was factory sealed Open Belly Rescue version. This one sold for $576. Of the two, going back to my discussion of buy it already graded versus buy one that's ungraded and grade it yourself, obviously the Tauntaun would be the way to go to buy one ungraded at $576, given that a high grade example can probably pretty close to $1,000. I mean, we've seen a few get up there in price, whereas the Wampa is just so hard to find one, even in this shape with a slight crease, but uncreased, it's almost impossible to find. Here was a beautiful proof card, again, from LJ's Card Shop. He's got a limitless supply of AFA graded proof cards. This was the 45-back Luke Skywalker Bespin AFA 80 with an archival case. That sold at $20.26. Not a bad deal. A little tougher to find ESB proof cards relative to Revenge of the Jedi proof cards. And I think this was a pretty good buy and probably pretty likely to hold its value long term. I do think that ESB proof cards are tougher to find, and you don't usually see them on eBay that much. You usually see them on Hakes, but much more difficult to find than Revenge of the Jedi proof cards, which have come down in price a little bit, as they should, right? I mean, there's a lot more of those floating around than ESB or, God forbid, Star Wars proof cards. You see the occasional Star Wars proof cards in private collections on Facebook photos. It's insane, some of the stuff that these people have. Or the Power of the Force, Chromelins, things like that. Those are very, very pricey. But something like this, I think, is a really nice target. Now, it was an AFA 80, which is a little less desirable versus an 85 or an 85 plus or a 90, which it seems that's where the prices really jump up. But, I would argue that an AFA 85 for this proof card would have been double the price, $4,000 or more. So I don't think that was a terrible buy for an AFA 80 at $20.26. Here was a gorgeous debut card, Kenner Canada 45 back for Luke Skywalker and his Hoth Battle Gear. AFA 85, straight 85s for the subscore. I mean, what a beauty. I would have loved to have bought this. Timing was terrible on it, but there's the back of that card. La Guerre des Étoiles is really nice. I just love these Kenner Canada card backs, and I do think that there is maybe a little heat to Kenner Canada card backs. They're a little tougher to find, and people like the foreign stuff. It's not nearly as expensive as like the square, rectangle Meccano cards or, the Harberts, things like that. It's kind of if you're a mint on card collector for U.S. Kenner cards or even try logos, this is kind of the next step up, I think, in terms of really nice foreign card backs that don't set you back too bad relative to some of those really expensive ones like early Palatoys, even ESB Palatoys with the Palatoy logo. I mean, a lot of those go for big, big money. So Kenner Canada is a nice way to collect foreign card backs. And shout out to JS, by the way. He found me a Kenner Canada 41 back C clear blister Dengar. So I've got that on the way. That was on Facebook for sale. Thank you very much, Jay, for tagging me on that. I've been trying not to spin, but I cannot pass that up. It was an absolute stunner. So thank you very much, Jay, for tagging me on that. Anyway, this one sold for $881, AFA 85 yellow blister for that Luke Skywalker Hoth. Here was the AFA 85 Land Speeder in the Collector's Series. So this is the second iteration of the Land Speeder. That one sold for $785, which I thought was not a bad deal at all relative to what we've seen some of these go for. I think there was an AFA 85 that sold at auction for around $900 earlier this year. Maybe it was late fall of last year. So I thought $785 was not a terrible deal at all. Here is the Ewok Combat Glider, also AFA 85, factory sealed. You can see a little scuffing there by the Return of the Jedi logo. $565 on that. That seems a little high to me. I mean, to me, if it comes down to spending $565 versus $785 on the Land Speeder, to me, I think you're going to have a better chance of holding your value on the Land Speeder, just given the iconic nature of that box art, versus the Ewoks. I mean, don't get me wrong. I like the Murder Bears, but I just think that for an AFA 85, for $565, that seems a little high to me, and maybe I'm wrong on that. But you know, I've seen some AFA 80s go $300 to $350, so $565 is not like the worst overpay in the world. But I find it hard to pay that much for the Ewok Combat Glider when you can spend maybe a couple $100 more and get the Land Speeder for in high grade, same grade, AFA 85. I got some early 65 back, Return of the Jedi cardbacks, General Madine on the 65A, AFA 80 with a slightly yellowed blister. This seller had a nice batch of early Return of the Jedi cardbacks. This one sold for $172.19. Here was Weequay on the 65B, again, yellowed blister, but AFA 85, $201. And, you know, long term with Return of the Jedi cardbacks, people are going to be paying up or down depending on how yellowed it is, right? And I think they're all going to yellow eventually. Maybe I'm wrong, but maybe you just enjoy it while you can if it's fairly clear blister or still clear blister like the one I'm getting ready to show you in a little while. But I think over time, a lot of these are just going to yellow, period. And this is certainly one that was yellowed, but a very nice example for $201. Here's the Gammy, AFA 80 Plus. This was the 65B, and I can understand why it sold for $355, just given how large that blister is, how easy it was to ding when it was sitting on retail shelves. I think I'd probably, if I'm going to get a Gamorrean Guard mint on card, I'd probably aim for the Made in Mexico version for the U.S. market that stays clear. And you can find those for relatively good values still on eBay, maybe ungraded, but you're going to have to pay a little bit more, obviously, for graded. But that was still a very nice example, don't get me wrong. The Biker Scout on the 65B, AFA 80 Plus with a yellow blister. Again, unpunched on that one, $316. You know, this is the Made in Taiwan version, I believe, if memory serves. And, you know, there's the Made in Taiwan, the Hong Kong, and obviously the Made in Mexico for the U.S. market that has the shorter nose on the helmet. But this one obviously is the longer nose Biker Scout for the Taiwan COO. And that one sold again for $316. Not a terrible deal on that one at all. Here was the rarity, though. I mean, when's the last time you've seen a U.S. Kenner Card 65B Rebel Commando with a clear blister and a clear inner tray? I assume this one's got the tray. Let me see here. Yeah, I mean, it's got the inner tray, and it's still clear. I mean, I can't remember a time of ever seeing one of those. This was graded AFA 85 as well. It was a punched example, but that one sold for $430. And I think that, you know, going forward, to the extent that some of these survivors actually stay clear blister, those prices are going to continue to escalate. And I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I just think that it's just so hard to find some of these. And I feel like the Rebel Commando especially almost always turns yellow. So $430, I don't think was a terrible overpay at all. Here's Princess Leia Hoth, and usually the 77A Princess Leia Hoth gets really, really yellow. Mix in a little bit of water, because usually that blister gets really dark, really, really dark. But this one was fairly, you know, just fairly yellow, just very, very faint. AFA 80 Plus unpunched example with a price sticker for $5.10. And again, that's a number I could see paying, because even yellow blister ones can go $350 to $400 in high grade all day long. So I thought that was not a bad deal at all. This Han Solo was the 65A. It sold for $700 on one bid. It was a punched example with a little bit of damage by the hanger tag with a KB Toys price sticker. Now, to me, it looks like it's starting to yellow, okay? It was, I think the label was still, the label says it was a clear blister. Card 80, blister 75, figure 80. But just looking at it, it looks like it might be starting to yellow. The pictures were terrible. So, you know, again, I could be wrong on that. But to me, it looks a little yellowy. But again, maybe not. It's just hard to tell because of the photos. But $700 on that, you know, assuming that it actually is a clear blister, then yeah, I could see paying that number. But that's one of those ones I'd probably ask the seller for some better photos outside of the poly bag and not inside of his basement dungeon. I mean, it's just terrible photos. All right, time to talk about some tri-logos. Really nice tri-logos sold in this batch we're covering today. Here was an ATS ST driver, AFA 80 with a 75 subscore for the card. It did have one crease right there on the left-hand side, which the seller was kind enough to disclose, and probably could have easily hid that, though. You know, based on this photo, you can't really see it, right? But I like when sellers are erring on the side of disclosure, and that one sold for $256, which is probably about right. And then now we're talking about the beautiful tri-logos that sold by CIB. All of these sold during the same auction where the Japanese poppies sold. And I've already done a video analyzing those poppy sales, but these tri-logos, I didn't want to kind of mix and match. I wanted to focus solely on the poppies. But this was a beautiful Wicket graded AFA 80, and this one did have the Dutch Clipper catalog on the back. I've got a couple of tri-logos like that. I just think it's kind of a unique thing. This is one I really wanted. This is a beautiful unpunched example, clear blister, $468 on that one. And the R2-D2 sensor scope, this one had what looks to me, it was labeled near mint, clear blister, but to me it looks like it's starting to yellow right there at the top of the blister. And again, you're nitpicking there, but it could be like some kind of like just bad shadow or something. But to me, it does look like it's starting to yellow just a tad. That one sold at $475. That was an AFA 80 punched example. The AT-AT Commander sold for big money. Big money. This one really jumped up at the end. My buddy Matthew C. was bidding on this. And I was like, I hope you got that. It sold for $250. He's like, no, it didn't. And I refreshed my eBay and it sold for $527.62. So I was way off on that one. That's a big number for an AFA 80 punched example. KB Toys price sticker again. That to me seems really high. I don't know what to say. AFA 80, I mean, mine got a 75 plus with CAS, and I paid like $175 for it before grading. So, you know, this one is better. I mean, this is certainly a better example than mine. My card score was a 75 and brought it down. This one had the blister score of 75, which brought it down. But this, you know, it still got the 80 score, which it should have, because my card had some faint creases that did not show up very well in the Hakes auction photos. But I rolled the dice on it at 175. I can live with that. But it got the 75 plus. This one, 527. That seems like a really steep number. The 21B Medical Droid AFA 80. This was, again, a punched example. Straight 80s for the subscore. Etched corner blister was how this one was labeled. Sometimes they do that. Sometimes they don't on the AFA label. But you can see very clearly there. You know, some sellers think it's a ding. It's not. It's just like a factory etching that they put on some of these. And I think my AT-AT driver has that. I could be wrong, but that's it's just a kind of a variation on the blister style. 440.66, pretty good deal on that one. 21B on the tri-logo card back is a tough one to find, and that one actually went a little bit less than I was expecting. Not a bad deal at all on that one, if you ask me. Next up, Neonum AFA 80. This is one that is very tough to find. This one also had the etched blister, and you can see here that they didn't label it as such, but this one very clearly has the etched blister style as well. So I don't know why some of them they label it, sometimes they don't. Maybe it's for certain characters that appeared on multiple blister types, whereas maybe 9num only came on the etched blister type. I don't know. That's my theory. 80, 80, 85, but this is a very tricky character to find on the tri-logo. Very, very tough. I wanted this one very bad, I'm not going to lie. 501 is not a terrible deal. I've seen them sell for higher than that. So that's a number I would have paid in a heartbeat. Finally, AFA Yellowed 80 Kenner Canada Unpunched R2-D2 Droids pop-up lightsaber. That is a beauty. Really, really nice example. AFA 80 straight 80s for the sub score. And that was sold for $829, which I thought was a really good deal, just given that it's the Kenner Canada cardback. I mean, that's a bargain, if you ask me. And the yellowing on it wasn't nearly as bad as some that we've seen. So I thought that was a pretty good buy by somebody. Anyway, that's all I really had for this video. I hope you enjoyed this look at some really nice sales for vintage mint-on card action figures. Mostly graded, but some ungraded as well. Thank you, as always, for watching, and I'll be back soon.